cute.
You're cute.
You.
Oh dear, she's stuck in an infinite loop and he's an idiot.
Our brain is incredible. We have huge frontal lobes with an amazing motor cortex paired with a primitive amygdala. And that's kind of a recipe for unnecessary anxiety. OCD is an anxiety disorder characterized by ridiculous obsessions and silly compulsions that causes distress and/or impairment to the sufferer. There are two main actors in creating anxiety in your brain, namely the amygdala and the cortex. The cortex is responsible for all the amazing capabilities of a brain. It gives humans the ability to imagine, plan, and anticipate. But because we have the ability to anticipate things, we also often generate unnecessary anxiety. We take mere thoughts too seriously and therefore create unfounded worry. When we believe in the absolute truth of thoughts, it is called cognitive fission. And when we take thoughts too seriously and keep on thinking about them, we are setting the stage for obsessive thinking. The cortex operates by the survival of the busiest principle. When neurons fire together, a connection between them is strengthened. If this happens repeatedly, a pattern of circuitry develops so that, eventually, activation of one neuron will cause the other neuron to also activate. A repetition of firing certain neurons together is what builds a circuit in the brain. This means that whenever you think a thought and continue to think about it, you're making the thought stronger. And even when you argue the thought to make it go away, you're just repetitively thinking about it, only making it stronger. Understanding that neurons that fire together, wire together, shows you that even arguing against your obsession of worries just strengthens them. The amygdala is an almond-shaped part of the brain responsible for the fight-flight-freeze response. It's an old part of the brain that existed for millions of years. The amygdala helped us survive in a world full of dangers by activating the necessary bodily reactions when faced with a threat. Though we can thank the amygdala for our survival, it's also the source of unnecessary anxiety. The amygdala can react rapidly when it senses danger, even though there's no actual threat. Like when you perceive something that looks like a spider and you get this rush of adrenaline before fleeing and screaming out of fear. But then you realize it was nothing. In cases like this, the amygdala is reacting on the basis of raw, incomplete information from the thalamus. The amygdala reacts faster than the cortex can process information. The amygdala can also be activated by the cortex by interpreting thoughts. For example, let's say you have a pain in your belly and your cortex overthinks the pain as a possible sign of colon cancer. Then you feel anxious and start to panic. This means that the overthinking activated the amygdala. The amygdala is kinda dumb because it doesn't really know how to differentiate reality and imagination. The capacity to imagine made-up scenarios is a relatively recent feature of the brain due to the development of the cortex. But the amygdala didn't catch up to this development yet. It's the same amygdala we had since millions of years ago. The cortex's ability to imagine things paired with an ability of the amygdala to separate the real from the imagined is a great source of unfounded anxiety. Your cortex can imagine the silliest situations and your amygdala is going to react to it. And when you have OCD, you can get stuck on those silly thoughts. The circuit involved in OCD is composed of the orbital frontal cortex, the basal ganglia, and connections between the frontal lobes and the amygdala. First, we get an external or internal stimulus that makes us anxious. Then we obsess about the situation, which makes us even more anxious. And in order to alleviate the anxiety, we perform compulsions in the form of rituals. We get temporary relief, but we never really feel satisfied, so we do the compulsions over and over until we feel somewhat satisfied. What happens in the brain is that the OFC senses that something is wrong and sends signal to the cingulate gyrus that something terrible is going to happen, so it must do something. Normally, the cingulate gyrus suppresses this something is wrong signal. It acts like an automatic gear shift, but in people with OCD, this gear shift is very sticky and has a hard time moving on to the next task. As a result, the OFC and the cingulate gyrus are stuck on the on position and keep on firing. Hence the loop of OCD where you can never feel satisfied even after you did something to correct a mistake. The OFC and the cingulate gyrus become hyperactive, and the person experiences feelings of unease and anxiety that can't seem to go away. If your orbital cortex tells you that you made a mistake, your cingulate gyrus causes you to feel discomfort or anxiety until you fix that mistake. The interior cingulate cortex serves as a bridge between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Instead of smoothly relaying information between the cortex and the amygdala, it gets stuck on certain ideas or images. Because of the sticky coated nucleus, the information flowing back and forth inside the ACC is caught in a repetitive loop. The error detection system in the OFC is strongly connected to the coated nucleus, which is part of the basal ganglia. Evidences from a lot of scientific studies show that damages to the basal ganglia can cause OCD. If you have OCD, especially if you have a juvenile onset OCD, chances are you also have motor tics. In fact, many people with OCD also have motor tics. That's because the coated nucleus and the putamen are part of the same structure known as the striatum, which is also part of the basal ganglia. Problems in the putamen are related to tics, and problems with the coated nucleus are related to OCD symptoms. If we follow the survival of obedience principle of Dr. Jeffrey Swartz, no obsession is going to be cured by more thought. We can't reason nor argue with obsession nor with compulsions. If anything, we're just making the thought stronger in this way. What we need is to make the connections between the neurons involved in the obsession and compulsions weaker by not using them. In my previous video, I talked about how OCD makes you feel. If you don't give in to the compulsions, you're gonna feel shitty since it's going to haunt you until you do. And if you give in, you'll still feel shitty because you're going to end up tired and hating yourself. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, but you're actually more damned in the long term if you do. In order to break the cycle, you need to refocus your attention to another activity for 15 minutes before giving in to the compulsions. Day by day, you try to stretch the time longer to something else until you completely forget about it. And when you remember it, you'll get the compulsions again, so you set a timer for 15 minutes, and you get the trail. This way, you're manually shifting the gears to another thought and activity. The cognitive behavioral therapy approach to OCD is called exposure response prevention. Basically, intentionally expose yourself to germs and fail, for example, and you avoid doing anything about it for some time and see that nothing wrong actually happens. But you can fix your brain by yourself by shifting the gears manually. According to Dr. Jeffrey Swartz, when patients shift gears repeatedly by consciously changing behaviors, they actually start to fix their transmission by changing the metabolism of the striatum. Using the cortex, we work around the glitch in the striatum. And the beauty of it is that this technique gets the transmission to slowly start working automatically once again. It becomes easier to shift gears and to change behaviors as you keep working at it. How you can do this is by acknowledging that what you're experiencing is a result of a faulty brain circuit in your brain caused by a sticky coated nucleus, which is supposed to act as a gear shifter. Every time your obsessions or compulsions show, tell yourself that it's not you, it's your OCD. Then you have to force yourself to focus on another activity that you like for 15 minutes instead of responding to the compulsions or entertaining the obsessions. I've been using this technique of deliberately refocusing my attention for 15 minutes to fight my compulsions, but at the time I didn't even know about it. I was just so tired and desperate that my brain searched for a way I could stop my compulsions. Plus, I started to get depressive symptoms and couldn't care less if I died or if the world would fall before my eyes. This technique really works, especially if you're consistent with it. If you're on medication, it's going to make the whole process much more bearable, but don't wait until you get depressive symptoms to start.